What's going on? This your big brother K-Rino, and y'all are tuned in to yet another visual version of K-Rino Radio, man. And we got some great knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to drop on y'all tonight, man, because we have a brother who is an author. He is he specializes in trying to get down to the root of why there is such an attack on Black male masculinity. He just authored a book called Institutional Racism in a Search for African-American Masculinity and Identity. And my brother has a BA in literature and language. He's just been doing it all, man. So I want to welcome my brother, Khefa Nosakhere, onto the show tonight. How you doing, family?
I'm great, brother. It's an honor to be interviewed by a Houston hip hop legend from the birth of hip hop, which I tell my kids all the time that I was lucky enough to see the birth of hip hop.
Yeah.
I'm really concerned about young people not using it properly as a weapon of social protest, the way it was when it was born.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we're gonna get into all that, big brother. Tell us about your origins. Tell us about how your journey started and what led you on this quest for standing up for Black people like you are right now, brother. What sparked? I know hip hop was an influence on that. You gave us a hint of that, but what are some of the early things that sparked your interest in this fight?
You know, when I was, I can answer that question very directly. The summer that I was going to the 7th grade, I was in vacation Bible school, and our Sunday school teacher, and I'm not making this up, her name was Miss Poindexter. I'm not making this up. She was an older woman. I guess she could have been our grandmother with the horn rimmed glasses. And one day, that popular image of Jesus. And I said, Miss Poindexter, they were in the burning desert and he looked like that. And obviously she looked at me like I had horns and a pitchfork. And I asked Miss Poindexter, I said, Miss Poindexter, if the people in the Bible were alive today, what would they look like? And obviously I did not get an answer that day, but that question and me looking at that picture is what started me on my intellectual and cultural journey to finding out the truth about history, the truth of the world, and of course, the incredible contributions of people of African descent.
That's a beautiful story, bro. And you were what age when you posed that question?
I guess that would have made me 12 or 13, somewhere up in there.
So something was already innately in you that kind of made you question that, because that's a pretty complex question at that age to connect it to the actual region that they were in and put that together like that. And I think that's something that goes missing when people don't ask that question. They just see the image that's been presented to us since we've been brought over here. So yeah, that's a very interesting point, brother. And so to go further as years go on, because I know at 12 years old, you probably still in elementary school. Did you just fell in love with it and kept on that path after that?
So the next incredible time frame is I have this story that when I was in high school, when I was a senior in high school, I was in advanced placement English, and you remember how those lockers were in high school? So one day I'm by my locker, I close the locker, and Ms. Fairbanks is standing right there. And she says, Kep, so we didn't have enough for a first and a fourth period AP English, so they had to merge the classes. And so Ms. Fairbanks says, Kep, I understand you're an outstanding student. I can't wait to have you in my class. All right, cool. So I get to our class, she hands us a list of the books we're supposed to read. And I said, Ms. Fairbanks, this is American literature, right? She says, yes. I said, there are no African-American authors on this list. She says, no, there are not. And so for the next 2 weeks, brother, I didn't say one word. And when I didn't speak, nobody else spoke, because I was the one who always sparked discussion. And then it's ironic that later in life, I would be an English teacher. So Miss Fairbanks comes to me. She says, Kef, okay, you can pick one book. I had to make the book count, and you can probably guess what book I picked, the autobiography of Malcolm X. And so that's my favorite story. That was my first protest, a protest which I did not say one word. And I learned the power of silence. I learned that there are many ways to fight. And it's something that I look back on and I laugh, and my friends laugh when I tell them that, Kef, you didn't say anything for 2 weeks.
Well, you know, also too, it's just a long, that story makes me know that that's a long continuation of trying to hide our place in history like that. I mean, it's all the way in, deeply rooted in the curriculum, especially when I was in school, and I know we can't be too far apart in age, but it's just always been something that was, in my opinion, a intentional effort to hide our contribution. So again, that just showed the foresight that you had to, like, well, yeah, well, hold on, man, why none of these authors look like us? So that's a beautiful thing. Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Now, let's talk about me and you. We may know, but there may be people out there that don't know. People of all races. What is at the root of these types of scenarios, like you mentioned, and where they would paint Jesus as being white, or where they would hide knowledge and literary contributions of Black authors? What's at the root of this, brother, in this country? For those who might not be aware, they think it's just some kind of magical coincidence.
The short answer to that question is Caucasians are 11% of the world's population.
Okay.
And somewhere around, I think in the 15th century, they became aware of how outnumbered they were, number one. And number two, they became aware that if they mated with everyone else in the world, they would not exist. And so they had to think of a way to stop that from happening and to ensure their survival. And so giants like Stokely Carmichael and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and Dr. Yusuf bin Yaqanan and Dr. John Henry Clark, one of them called white male supremacy a great invention. And they said, well, you know what? We can't kill all of them. We can't shoot them all. We need them to help us. And so they made an invention. We need them to hate themselves. We need them to work against their own best interests. And so that is what is at the root of white male supremacy.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you started saying make them hate themselves. You know, the first thought comes to Black person mind is automatically Willie Lynch. You know, you start thinking about all of that and all of the principles that were included in that and that we still see today. So yeah, it's been an ongoing conversation about how if you take all of the people of what we call the people of color of the world and you combine them, that they outnumber Caucasians 11-1. So there's a fear. As I was reading in your biography, when you said one of your favorite albums was the It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back by Puffy. But yes, I think about the other album they had called Fear of a Black Planet.
Fear of a Black Planet.
And that's what it kind of boils down to, is that you know, the numbers are not reflective of them reproducing at the rates that we reproduce by accident, you know, the wind blows or something like that. But that's a really detailed and great answer, brother. What role do we have to play as being, I wouldn't call myself an elder, but I'm just an older generation. How do we get this information to our younger generations that may not even be focused on that level, and just say, man, how can I get the young cat in the street to be interested in the conversation that me and you are having right there, so they'll know themselves?
So I know that, first of all, I lived in Houston for six years, and I was very fortunate to teach at Madison High School. And I understand you are a graduate of Sterling High. Yeah. See, I do my homework. I noticed that when I told the boys my story, I'm the oldest of four from a single female-headed household. My mama was a high school dropout, and I couldn't go to my ninth grade graduation because I didn't have a suit. And when I tell my kids my story, they listen. And so to answer your question, I tell them about how I grew up growing up in New Orleans over the last 20 to 30 years. New Orleans has been had the number one murder rate in the country per capita. And I told them that my desire for an education kept me from selling drugs. It kept me from being a statistic. And so the way that we reach young people, number one, is we use technology. And when I'm asked, well, why is Black pride relevant? Why is Black culture relevant? Why do Black children need to know Black inventors and the accomplishments of people who look like them? Well, children and teenagers who I deal with as a high school teacher, they know something's wrong. If someone is telling you you did nothing all the time, that right there raises a red flag. I did nothing. Doc Ben said something I'll never forget. He said, even if Black people made no contributions to civilization and we were lazy, we would be experts in rest and relaxation. Okay? But they don't want to admit we did anything. And so now we are living in an age where the internet has made keeping a secret impossible. And the lies of history, the lies of the past are coming to fruition, they're coming to light. And so we have to summarize, we have to use technology for our young people. And we have to make sure that our young people understand what happened to us as a people, who we really are, so that that does not happen again.
Beautiful. And the beginning of your answer, when you talked about when you told the students your story, I also got out of that as an answer, relatability. You showed them that, hey, I walked in y'all's shoes to some degree. It may not be exactly this or exactly that, but the fact that I come from the same kind of struggle that you come from, and look at you now.
The oldest of four from a single female-headed household. Those kids know what that means.
Right, no doubt, no doubt.
I tell them that's the PG-13 version. They know, they can fill in the rest of that story.
Right.
Whenever you take a single mother and give her 4 kids, that's almost a guarantee for poverty. I think any economist would agree with me in that regard. But when I tell my students that nugget, when I leave with that, man, the room is so quiet, and my students, people that meet me, you from California? No, I'm not from California. I went to college in California, but I'm from New Orleans. I'm from the 7th Ward. I'm from a reality where you could not afford to be weak. But I decided to educate myself, and like you said, I've noticed that as I interact with young men, they listen to me, I think, for that reason, because when they hear my story. If I came from an upper middle class, 2-parent, 2-income household, I don't think they'd listen to me.
Yeah, because people they're gonna say, hey man, you ain't never been through what I've been. You don't live like how I live. So how can you come down here saying we need to do this and saying that? That's a big thing. The respect level that comes from somebody talking to you that's been where they've been. So that's a big thing, man. We are here with big brother Khefa Nosakhere, and he is already dropping some wisdom on us, man. Let's go back to the subject of institutional racism, and that's a word, that's a phrase that I would say has become more popular in the last few years or so. It was used to be flat out just racism. Now, I guess after the study of people like yourself and people that came before and people that are your contemporaries, they have attached the institutional part on it to let you know this thing is a system. What would you say to those who dismiss institutional racism as a myth and say, well, nah, these just black folks complaining and y'all need to do this, y'all need to. What would you say? What would you say to that, bro?
Well, 3 years ago, a white judge was prosecuted for uh, numerous uh, illegal acts in terms of procedure and putting black men in jail. And the reason for that is because he was a stockholder in a for-profit prison corporation. There you go, right there. That is, it used to be that state governments built prisons. But in the late 80s, you started seeing private prison corporations. And I even read one of the contracts, and most of the, which is standard, the contract calls for more than 85% capacity. And if that jail is under 85% capacity, the state has to pay the corporation. So if the average common black person needs to understand what that means, what I just said, they need to understand what that means.
Right, no question.
So when you talk about institutional racism, I can't think of a better example than that. I could keep going. They've done studies that when a black man and a white man commit the same crime, the black man's punishment is much harsher. One black woman, true story, I think she was out of town and she had a white girlfriend. And when they came to her praise her house, they thought the white woman owned the house. The house was appraised 3 times higher than it was for the black woman. Now, I don't know who looks at these examples and says, you know, it doesn't exist. But I have actually met black people in the last year, 2 years. There's something called Holocaust deniers. And I believe the actor Mel Gibson is, you know, Mad Max. He's probably the most famous Holocaust denier. What I have seen in our community is that there are black, I guess I would have to coin a phrase for them. There are black people who will tell you with a straight face that black kings were responsible for the slave trade. There are black people who will tell you that black on black violence is our #1 problem. They're, you know, very, very, very disturbing things coming from people who look like me and you know?
Right, no doubt, no doubt. And what I see in that a lot of times there are just isolated black people, black individuals who didn't go through that. So they are oblivious. They feel like, well, I didn't come up like that. I've never been harassed by the police. I've never been denied an opportunity because of my skin. So that can't be real. They feel like it's just something that we are complaining about because they haven't necessarily been through it like that. So that's a beautiful point that you made, brother, to kind of give that history and that layout, because there are too many statistics that point to institutional racism being a real thing. Even if you just break it down to the simple point of what number of the population we make up compared to what percentage of, like you say, the prison population that exists, man. So it's I just think that unfortunately black people like that, they gonna learn the hard way, you know, when it's all said and done. They'll have a rude awakening at some point, and I hate to see that, bro. Your list of influences, bro, is so vast and it's so diverse. You actually, I mean, from like you mentioned some of them, like Doc Ben and Dr. Clark and Dr. Welsing, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who was definitely that's my main influence. You even threw Rod Serling in there. And I laughed when I saw that, because that's one of my influences. I'm a Twilight Zone fan, you know, and it's about the writing, the creativity, and all of that, man. And what are some of the things that you personally as an author try to incorporate in your writing style that will distinguish you and put you in that category with those greats, you know?
Wow, man. Well, first of all, man, I got a lot of work ahead of me before that happens. But the short answer to your question would be, when I listen to the way that Rod Serling, first of all, Rod Serling was far ahead of his time. There's a Twilight Zone story called The Gift, and it's set in a Mexican village, and an alien comes to Earth to show he has a cure for cancer. He has a cheap chemical formula to turn deserts into fertile farmland. Of course, they kill him. Rod Serling wanted that episode to be about Emmett Till.
Wow.
CBS put all of their weight and power. They said, if you do that, we will cancel your show. So what he did was he changed, instead of Emmett Till, the little boy was a Hispanic boy. So a lot of people do not know that story. So, you know, I gain what is the word I'm looking for? I gain inspiration from the greats that came before me. The name of my company is Kalimba Publishing, and it's named in honor of the great Maurice White, you know, the founder of my favorite group. I gain inspiration from those who came before me. Richard Wright. There's a short story by Richard Wright I want you to read. It's called The Man Who Lived Underground. Okay. And it's about two corrupt white cops who grabbed this brother. A white woman was killed, and so they take Fred Daniels and beat a false confession out of him, and he escapes into the sewer. And that story, I was 18 years old when I read The Man Who Lived Underground. And I promise you that as a hip hop artist, when you read that story, you're gonna use some of that powerful imagery of what Fred Daniels saw in the sewer. I'm not gonna tell you what happened in the end, but The Man Who Lived Underground and Richard Wright, when people say the name Richard Wright, they're usually limited to native son, and that's a shame. And once I'm going to be able to tell the story, James Baldwin is a cultural icon. I was actually, earlier today, I saw a billboard in New Orleans with a James Baldwin quote. But what people don't know is, after the success of Native Son, Richard Wright was a megastar. Okay. And check this out. These two names I'm going to throw at you. Right. Langston Hughes called Richard Wright and told him about a 24-year-old James Baldwin. Wow. Think about that just for a second. Right. So Richard Wright used his power and influence to make sure that the 24-year-old James Baldwin got a Rosenwald Fellowship, and I believe it was $26,000 in 1946. Wow. And I checked, $26,000 in 1948 is like $200,000 today. But no one talks about Richard Wright.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I'm going to change that. Richard Wright, I've always said that if you read Richard Wright's work, if you read The Ethics of Jim Crow, if you read The Man Who Lived Underground, no one wrote better. No Black person's writing had more punch and warning us, telling us about the danger of dealing with white people than Richard Wright. He once described them not as people, but as a force of nature, like a hurricane or a tornado. And the times that he lived in, if you were to read The Ethics of Living Jim Crow, he was always in mortal fear of his life, that he could say one little thing and some white man could kill him.
Right.
You know, and his work, it's criminal that he's only remembered for Native Son. And even with that, I always say that what Jackie Robinson did on the baseball field in 1947, Richard Wright did in the literary world in 1940. When Native Son came out, it sold upwards of 300,000 copies. It won a National Book Award. It was a Book of the Month Club selection. So imagine if he were alive today, and it's like being in Oprah's book club, and he'd be everywhere. And even then, Native Son, Bigger Thomas, is one of the most famous characters in American history. And the first scene is in a very small Chicago tenement. Let's say it was Cabrini Green.
Right.
Okay, it was Bigger, his mama, and I think two younger siblings, and a big rat comes out. And Bigger had to get the skillet, you know, grandma's skillet?
Yeah, no doubt.
He had to get the skillet and kill the rat. That's the first scene.
Right.
And so in the near future, you will hear me lecturing about the legacy and the work of Richard Wright. The book itself, I study the lives of three Black men, Bigger Thomas, Richard Wright himself, and Black Boy. And by the way, Black Boy was written in 1945. And when Black Boy came out, that was a tremendous hit. So isn't it fascinating that Richard Wright's greatest two works encapsulated World War II? So 1940, 1945. And then the third, of course, would be The Man Who Lived Underground and Fred Daniels. And when you read what happened to Fred Daniels, it reminded me of Freddie Gray. And I'll leave it at that because I don't want to give away the story. But The Man Who Lived Underground is celebrated by academics. It's compared to Dostoevsky. It's compared to the greatest literature in terms of showing you the corruption of white cops, and that a father and a husband, a taxpayer, can be grabbed at any minute, and they put a charge on him. They're like the brothers say, you know.
Right.
It's The Man Who Lived Underground. I want you to read that.
Yeah, I'm gonna check that out. Interesting stuff, man. A lot was going through my mind when you was breaking all that down, because you're right. We don't hear about Richard Wright, and you teaching me about him. But something you said when you kind of went into detail, it's always that one or two that stand a little firmer and stronger against the white supremacist system, whatever time it is. Those are the ones that we're not going to hear about because they've been intentionally written out of history or been attempted to have them written out of history. And it takes people like yourself to delve and come across those and then reintroduce them back to Black people, bro. So that's a wonderful jewel that you just dropped on us. Author and teacher and educator and scholar, brother Khefa Nosakhere is with us right now, man. Let's get into the Black masculinity aspect of this conversation, because that's been something that's been ongoing for the last few years as it's been a war. And there's a new term that I know you're familiar with. You probably already know what I'm gonna say. They have applied the word toxic in front of the word Black masculinity. What is it that's making the world make the claim that Black men being men is somehow toxic?
I think that I don't think it relates to the original reason for white male supremacy. And that if you ask any politician or historian or scholar, name one landmass that has the greatest mineral wealth, you can only name one. Okay? And so they want that wealth. They want access to it. But there's a problem. There's someone who was there first. So you have to get rid of that group. And what our
Not Africa, y'all. Okay, go ahead.
what our young people need, they need to understand that basic fact.
Yeah.
And so again, there are many ways to fight. We don't want to shoot them all. We need some of them to be in prison. We need some of them not to be husbands. We need some of them, you get my point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So toxic masculinity is simply another form of our oppression that our scholars need to address, just as much as we need to address Black folks spending more money in our own community with our own kind. So toxic Black masculinity, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that there's a group of people who do not want to see strong traditional nuclear Black families. And so how do you do that? Well, you take the leader out of the family. You make the woman the leader. You limit his ability to provide for his family. No, it doesn't take a NASA scientist to figure that out. And so what has to happen is that we need more Black men and Black boys to be aware of what's going on. I saw this meme on Facebook, and I'm gonna make sure that I use it. It goes, you may not be at war with white male supremacy, but white male supremacy is at war with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Beautiful. And that goes back to saying also that there's a direct link and connection between the institutional racism and the attempted feminization of Black men. Everything you spoke about in terms of like taking the powerful male figure out of the home, creating circumstances and conditions that would lead them getting locked up and things of that nature. So all of it is on a string. These are not isolated situations, man. Big brother, talk about those who may say, oh, hold on, let me get back into this because I don't want to leave the masculinity issue real fast. We'll compare it to what's going on in entertainment. Like everybody knows the old saying, okay, why they always want to put a Black man in the dress in a movie? Why are they even feminizing hip hop? You see a lot of hip hop artists, they dressing like women, they wearing tight clothes and things of that nature. It's all on a string. Give us kind of some of your insight and take on it as it relates to the entertainment industry and what they're doing to Black men on that level.
The entertainment industry or the media, we can include the entertainment industry in the media. If we were to look at pictures of news producers, in other words, who determines what is news? If we were to look at pictures of who determines what movies are going to be made, what records are going to be made, they don't look like us. And so Black youth have to be made aware of this. Who controls that image? Why do we see a young man in a dress with a purse? Well, it all ties into a group of people who want to destroy the Black family. And there's no other way to put it. How do you destroy the Black family? Go after the male. You can kill him, you can put him in jail, or you can emasculate him. Any one of those will do. Our youth need to hear that. They need to hear it so that we stop any negative self-defeating actions or attitudes that we carry out amongst each other. Our young people need to hear everything that we're talking about so that they can be aware, so that they can change their behavior, so that they can have productive, long lives, so that they can be aware.
No doubt. And the next follow-up question I would have to that is, with the same people, you said these people, they don't look like us, but these are the ones who are in control. They run media, they run Hollywood, they run all of these high level entities. What has to happen for individuals like you, individuals like myself, other individuals who we don't have the machine behind us, but we have the information? How does that information reach the millions and millions and combat the millions and millions that they're reaching because they got the power to put the nonsense out there? How do we link up and make sure that we can challenge them on those levels?
Well, the short answer to that question is that the brothers like you and I have to utilize technology. We have to work in our own communities and do what we can do in terms of those we can affect. We need to pool our resources. We need to find the information in terms of not only just documentaries, but numerous forms of proof of Black excellence is available. We need to pool our resources and utilize technology. We need a plan. We need a template. And it definitely can be done because I've always called the internet the great equalizer. We may not control Warner Brothers and CNN, but we can create our own thanks to the advances in digital technology. To give you an example, there used to be, you remember the old clunky cable access TV shows? Now you can have a digital network because of the blessings of technology. So, and by the way, you will see all these things because I believe now more than ever, it is so clear that the Black family and the Black man is under attack. And I point to the January 6th attack on the US Capitol. And so these people threatened to kill senators, and a handful of Republican senators block an investigation. I mean, I don't know how you look at that and come to any other conclusion other than the conclusions you have to.
No doubt.
And so, to summarize, we need to pool our resources. We need to utilize technology the way that others do. We need a plan and we need a strategy.
And pooling our resources is also something I'm a big advocate of, because our economic power would be one of the key components that would bring the respect that needs to be brought in the meantime. Now, me personally, I'm an advocate of separation. I'm like, look, let's just get away because we're not going to be able to live in peace because we're peaceful people by nature, and the warmongers ain't going to let us live in peace. But pooling our resources and the things we have, putting our little nickels and dimes together could create a power structure that they would have to respect. I want to ask you, why is it that Black pride and Black love and the push for Black awareness and Black empowerment, support Black on this, Black on, why is that considered to be anti-white or anti-other races when they hear us talk about lifting ourselves up? Why is that worry in their mind like that?
Well, the simple answer to that question is it's synonymous with the wrongs that were visited upon our heads and the heads of our ancestors, and they know it. The transatlantic slave trade was the worst treatment in human history. From I'm speaking in terms of trillions of dollars lost, millions and millions of lives destroyed, and the children of those who were destroyed, we are still suffering in America. Those who speak against our freedom point to a handful of Black millionaires. But if you look at Black America, we are still suffering as a people. Black women who are dark still do not believe they are beautiful. Black children still do not believe they are beautiful. We are trapped in the inner cities. Um, so the reason why these groups fear anything that we do to address our issues is related in the history, and you can't get away from it. Every time you try to get away from it, you can't. And in 1865, when Lincoln was shot, no, W.E.B. Du Bois said that the freedman stood for a second in the sun and had to go right back to the plantation that brutalized him. And so the death of Abraham Lincoln was a pivotal moment in the history of the United States because the Union Army, or the Union, the federal government, probably would have given our ancestors land. And so what Black people need to understand, there's a tragedy called the Tilden-Hayes Compromise. So in the presidential election, right after the Civil War,
1877.
of 1870s, very good, yes, sir. Tilden and Hayes, there was a dispute about the vote count. And so the powers that be had a meeting, and they said, listen, we're going to give Tilden, the Democrat, you get the White House, but you take the Southern troops out of the South. And when that happened, some scholars say that the 100 years after 1865, our oppression was more brutal because you had angry whites who were competing with skilled Black men for work. And I think that has a lot of weight to it. So there we go again with the history. We can't get away from it.
Right, man. Beautiful, man. Beautiful, beautiful teaching, man. And to follow up on what he's talking about, just go research what's referred to as the Reconstruction era and the fallout that happened after that. You know, Black people were doing well, it was kind of making some strides, and then once that compromise was made, it was all hell broke loose again. My brother Khefa Nosakhere is with us, man, and he is really, really teaching us, bro. Let people know how they can get your book and any other products that you have out, bro. Let them know how they can get that knowledge, fam.
So my producer and I, we have a joke. I would ask you, have you Googled me? So the simple response would be Google Khefa, Khefa Nosakhere, Nosakhere. And I think the first thing that will come up is the Amazon author page. I am working on my podcast, The Masculine Intellectual, and I'm also working on a companion documentary for the book, Institutional Racism and the Search for African American Masculinity and Identity and Selected Works of Richard Wright. The working title for the documentary is Richard Wright, Forgotten Genius. I'm still working on the subtitle. But the best way for the listening audience to find me is to simply Google me, Khefa Nosakhere, Khefa Nosakhere. And I'm going to be, this summer, I'll be downloading new videos, new content to announce the podcast. We're going to have some great topics designed to educate our people. So it's something that I'm definitely, this summer, I got a lot to look forward to.
Done deal, man. Beautiful, beautiful, and we wish you all the best. I'm looking to see you announce a a lecture tour or something soon, bro, because you got a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of information that Black people need to be aware of. I think the way you present and the relatability in which you express it would be something that Black people and young Black people would take to. So that way they can grow up rooted in that Black male masculinity and the things that our young sisters need as well coming up, man. So I appreciate you coming on with us, big brother. It was long overdue, but it was right on time. And anytime in the future, you know, I'd love to bring you back. And if there's something going on, I would love to get your insights on it, because I'm sure you're gonna have something valuable to provide, brother.
So I plan on doing a pre-launch for the Masculine Intellectual. And I think it would be appropriate for us to reconnect at that time. And I can read you some of the topics. The first topic will be COVID, and I'll have a respected Black scientist to talk about the COVID. A lot of the topics, what I did was I reached out to my readers and asked them, what would you like Kef to tackle? What topics would you like me to tackle? And that was very fortuitous in terms of the substance and depth of what I got. And I'll be able to go to the root of the problem so that we can get to a solution that works.
No doubt, brother. Well, we're gonna definitely be until when you start lining it up and it's time, hit me up and we'll bring you right back on, brother. Because like I say, you have something that the world needs to be aware of, you know, all people, because it's like that's the thing, that fear that they have of us being strong and dominant and standing in our purpose. Hey man, look, it's only a threat to you if you are suffering from that kind of guilt, or if you have an oppressive mindset from the beginning. If not, then you shouldn't feel no kind of way about it. Plain and simple. So thank you again for coming on, big brother. You're welcome back anytime you choose, family. And they getting ready to see this right now.
It's my pleasure, brother.
All right, peace and blessings, family.
Love.